Overthinking is often misunderstood. We casually label it a bad habit, something we do when we're stressed or bored, like biting nails or scrolling on our phones. But if you look closely, overthinking isn't just a surface-level behavior. It runs deeper. It's not a habit in the usual sense. It's a coping mechanism, something your mind created, often years ago, to keep you feeling safe, prepared, and in control. And unless you understand that, you'll never really be able to stop. Think about it. Overthinking gives the illusion of productivity. It makes you feel like you're doing something, analyzing, planning, preparing, but what it's really doing is giving your fears something to chew on. When you're scared, uncertain, or emotionally overwhelmed, your brain doesn't just sit there silently. It rushes in to fix things, to find the answer, and if the situation can't be fixed immediately, if there's emotional discomfort, ambiguity, or risk it loops. Again and again and again, that's overthinking. It's your brain trying to soothe through control. We all want to feel safe. That's one of the most fundamental human needs, but life doesn't always offer safety. It offers uncertainty, change, disappointment, risk, and for many of us, especially those who learned early on to be hyper, vigilant or perfectionistic, thinking became a shield. If I just think long enough, I'll make the right decision. If I prepare for every scenario, nothing will catch me off guard. If I go over what happened, maybe I can prevent it from happening again. The brain is trying to protect you from pain, but it ends up creating more of it. And that's why overthinking feels exhausting. It drains your energy even when you're doing nothing physical. It creates stress out of thin air. It amplifies your doubts and magnifies small problems into impossible ones. Not because you're weak, but because your brain is trying to cope in the only way it knows how. It's trying to manage your emotions by solving them with thoughts. And the reason it doesn't work is because thoughts can't resolve what's emotional. You can't think your way out of anxiety. You can't solve self-doubt with logic. You can't silence fear by running simulations of worst-case scenarios. You just end up getting stuck in your head, further away from the actual moment. Let's be clear. Overthinking is not a thinking problem. It's a feeling problem. It's what your mind does when your body is uncomfortable, when your emotions are too loud, when the situation feels out of your control. And that's why traditional advice like, just don't overthink, never works. You can't tell someone to stop using the one thing they've always relied on to feel safe without giving them something else to anchor to. You have to replace the pattern, not just remove it. So what does that mean for you? It means you have to stop blaming yourself for overthinking. Stop shaming yourself for doing what your brain has been trained to do. Because as long as you see it as a flaw, you'll keep trying to suppress it, and suppressed patterns always come back louder. The real shift begins when you realize, this is not who I am, this is how I've been coping. It's not your identity, it's not permanent, it's just a response, and responses can be rewired. When you start to catch yourself in an overthinking spiral, pause. Don't try to immediately stop it. Just observe it. Ask yourself, what am I trying to avoid feeling right now? Is it fear, guilt, shame, insecurity? Most of the time, the thoughts are a distraction from the real discomfort underneath. The looping mind is trying to avoid the body's sensations. But here's the twist. Your emotions won't kill you. Avoiding them will. Avoiding them keeps you locked in a cycle of mental exhaustion. Facing them, that sets you free. The next time you find yourself overthinking, don't fight the thoughts. Turn inward, ask yourself, what do I need right now? Not what should I figure out? Not what decision do I have to make? But what do I need? Maybe it's to take a breath, to cry, to be still, to move, to forgive yourself. That's where healing begins. Not in the loops of logic, but in the space where you meet yourself with compassion. And let me tell you something else. You didn't choose to become an overthinker. It was a response to your environment. A learned strategy. At some point in your life, thinking deeply and constantly may have helped you avoid consequences, stay ahead of problems, or feel in control when everything else felt chaotic. so of course your brain kept doing it. But now it's not helping. It's holding you back. You've outgrown the need for it. You're ready for a different kind of safety, one that doesn't depend on controlling every outcome in your head. You stop overthinking not by shutting down your brain, but by shifting your trust. By learning to trust yourself, your intuition, your decisions, your ability to handle whatever comes. When you build that trust, slowly, consistently, the need to overthink begins to fade because you no longer need your thoughts to protect you. You've started protecting yourself with presence, courage, and clarity. And that is when the mind becomes quiet, not because it has nothing to say, but because you're finally listening to the right voice inside. Thinking isn't the enemy. In fact, it's one of your greatest strengths. The ability to reflect, to analyze, to plan, to imagine. These are what make you intelligent, aware, and capable of creating a meaningful life. But there's a line, a thin line between thinking and overthinking, between reflection and rumination, between planning and paralysis. The real danger isn't your thoughts, it's getting stuck in them, and that's exactly what overthinking is. It's not about thinking too much. It's about thinking in circles. You're not moving forward, you're looping. You go over the same scenario again and again, replaying that conversation second, guessing that decision, forecasting every possible outcome of something that hasn't even happened yet. And every time you run through that mental loop, you feel more stressed, more unsure, more disconnected from the present. That's because your thoughts aren't leading you anywhere. They're just spinning. There's a huge difference between productive thought and paralysis by analysis. Productive thought leads to clarity, it creates insight, it helps you make decisions, but when you overthink, your thoughts become noise. They clutter your mind with endless what-ifs and maybes. You start asking questions that can't be answered. What if I mess up? What if they don't like me? What if I make the wrong move? You get caught in a storm of uncertainty, and the more you think, the more chaotic it feels. This is where people get confused. They believe if they just think harder, they'll find peace. If they just analyze a little more, they'll figure it out. But you've probably noticed, it never works. The more you chase certainty through thought alone, the further away it gets. It's like trying to dig yourself out of a hole with a deeper hole. The thinking becomes compulsive. You don't choose it. It takes over. And instead of finding answers, you just find more questions. The truth is, your brain is a problem-solving machine. It wants to resolve things, close loops, reach conclusions. But life doesn't always give you resolution. Some things are uncertain. Some questions don't have immediate answers. Some moments require action, not more thought. And when your brain doesn't get closure, it panics. It keeps trying to fix what can't be fixed by thinking alone. That's when you get stuck. Getting stuck in your mind feels safe, but it's actually a form of self-sabotage. Because when you're stuck, you're not moving, you're not deciding, you're not living. You're stuck in the waiting room of your own life, hoping that if you just think long enough, clarity will knock on the door. But clarity doesn't come from thinking. It comes from doing, from choosing, from experiencing. You might believe you need to feel 100% certain before you act. But let's be honest, how often does that actually happen? Most of the time, you don't feel fully ready. You don't have all the answers, and that's okay. You're not supposed to. Clarity is not a prerequisite for action. It's a result of it. You move, and then you understand. You speak, and then you hear your truth. You step forward, and then you see the path. Getting unstuck begins with interrupting the loop. That doesn't mean you stop thinking. It means you shift the kind of thinking you're doing. You go from what if to what now. You stop asking, what could go wrong, and start asking, what small action can I take right now? You stop spiraling around questions you can't control and start focusing on the one thing you can, your next move. You'll notice something powerful when you do this. The moment you take action, any action, the noise in your head starts to quiet. Why? Because your brain now has feedback. It's not operating in a vacuum anymore. It has new data, and that data gives your mind something real to process instead of hypotheticals. That's what breaks the loop. Not certainty, not more information, motion, even a small step. Sending the message, making the call, saying yes, saying no can disrupt the cycle of overthinking. It's like shaking up a snow globe. Suddenly, everything settles just enough for you to see clearly again. And the beautiful part is, the more often you do this, the more your brain learns a new way to cope, a new way to feel safe. It learns that clarity isn't about being perfect. It's about being present. So if you find yourself stuck in thought, don't judge it. Don't panic. Just recognize that you're in a loop. And instead of feeding it with more thought, pause, breathe, ask yourself, what is the next right thing I can do? Not the best thing, not the forever thing, just the next right thing, and then do it. That's how you get unstuck. Overthinking is a maze of mirrors. It reflects every fear, every doubt, every angle until you're too disoriented to move. But you don't need to find the perfect exit. You just need to stop walking in circles. You need to choose a direction, and once you do, everything starts to shift. Because at the end of the day, it's not your thoughts that hold you back. It's staying stuck in them. It's waiting for the perfect moment that never comes. It's thinking so much that you forget to live. And when you remember that the power is in your hands, not in your thoughts, you take back control, not just of your mind, but of your entire life. One of the biggest misconceptions we hold is that we can think our way out of overthinking. That if we just analyze more, reason harder, or mentally prepare long enough, we'll finally get relief. But here's the paradox that so many of us discover the hard way. The more you try to think your way out, the deeper you spiral in. Because overthinking isn't a problem of insufficient thought. It's a problem of excess thought with no movement. It's like trying to calm a storm by shouting at the wind. The effort only fuels the chaos. When you're trapped in overthinking, your brain becomes a closed loop. You replay the same questions, the same doubts, the same imaginary scenarios, hoping that clarity will emerge if you just run through the loop one more time. But clarity doesn't live inside repetition. It lives in disruption. It comes when you break the loop, not with more thinking, but with action, emotion, movement, or presence. That's the real shift, realizing that your way out isn't mental, it's physical and experiential. Think about the last time you were deep in an overthinking spiral. Maybe you were stuck trying to decide whether to take a new job, or send that message, or walk away from a relationship. Maybe you were obsessing over something you said or didn't say weeks ago. You kept thinking, revisiting, analyzing. You told yourself you were being careful, responsible, wise, but after hours, maybe even days, of mental gymnastics, you didn't feel closer to peace. You felt more confused. More drained? That's because your mind was never meant to do all the work alone. It needs your body, your heart, and your intuition to join the conversation. Overthinking is what happens when thought becomes disconnected from the rest of you. It becomes ungrounded, like a balloon drifting higher and higher, farther from reality. And here's the truth that sets many people free. You can't solve emotional distress with intellectual reasoning. You can't logic your way out of fear. You can't analyze your way into self-worth. You can't overplan your way into confidence. Those states aren't born from thinking. They're born from experience, from being in your body, from doing the thing, from feeling and responding to life, not sitting on the sidelines trying to mentally prepare for every outcome. The mistake we make is treating overthinking like a puzzle we just haven't solved yet. We believe that one more hour of thinking will give us the clarity we need to act, but the truth is, clarity comes after action, not before. The clarity you're looking for won't arrive while you're sitting still, running simulations in your mind. It arrives the moment you take a step, even if it's small, even if it's messy, because movement gives your brain new input, new data, new emotional signals, and most importantly, it disrupts the thought loop. Here's something even more powerful. Motion doesn't just break the cycle, it resets your nervous system. Overthinking often comes hand in hand with anxiety. Your breath becomes shallow, your muscles tense. Your body senses a threat, even if it's imaginary, and sends signals of danger back to the brain. That's when your thoughts start racing, and the more your thoughts race, the more your body reacts. It's a feedback loop. But the loop can be interrupted, not by thinking calmer thoughts, but by calming the body first, with breath, with stretching, with movement, with grounding practices that pull you back into the present moment, where overthinking can't survive. That's what makes presence so powerful. When you're truly in the now, your brain can't project into the future or ruminate on the past. Overthinking needs time travel to exist. It feeds on memory and prediction. But when you anchor into your senses, what you see, feel, hear, smell, taste, you rob overthinking of its fuel. You come back to reality, and in reality, most things aren't as scary or complex as they seemed in your head. Another reason why thinking can't solve overthinking is because overthinking is not about the situation. It's about your state of mind. The issue isn't just what you're thinking about. It's how you're feeling when you're thinking about it. If you're anxious, insecure, afraid of judgment, or avoiding conflict, your thoughts will twist themselves into knots trying to escape discomfort. But if you change your state, with breath, movement, rest, or connection, those same thoughts suddenly lose their grip. You can see more clearly, decide more confidently, let go more easily. So what's the takeaway? It's this. The mind is powerful, but it's not everything. And when it starts to spiral, the answer isn't to go deeper into thought, it's to come back to the body. Back to action, back to presence. You don't stop overthinking by winning a mental argument. You stop it by ending the debate altogether. You get up, you move, you make a decision. You take one tiny step toward reality. And in that moment, the loop begins to fade. Because you were never meant to live inside your head. You were meant to feel, to move, to connect, to decide. Overthinking pulls you away from life, but action. That's how you come home to it. There's a moment in every journey of change when the fog lifts. You suddenly see your pattern. You realize, I'm overthinking again. You recognize how often your mind races, how much time you spend trapped in looping thoughts, how it drains your energy and steals your peace. That moment of awareness is powerful. It feels like a breakthrough. And in many ways it is, because awareness is always the first step. But here's what most people don't realize. Awareness alone is not enough. Knowing your pattern doesn't automatically break it. Understanding your mind doesn't automatically free you from it. That's why so many people say, I know I'm overthinking, but I can't stop. Because awareness is only the beginning. What you do after that moment of recognition, that's what really matters. Imagine this. You're standing in a room with the lights finally turned on. You can see the clutter. You can see the mess. You can see the disorganization that was causing you stress all along. That's awareness. It gives you clarity. But just seeing the mess doesn't clean it up. You have to roll up your sleeves and start moving things, sorting, letting go, rearranging. Action is what turns insight into transformation. And when it comes to overthinking, the same principle applies. Becoming aware of your overthinking is the moment the light comes on. But to create real change, you need to move. That's where many people get stuck. They think that by naming the pattern, they've already begun the healing. And yes, awareness is healing. But if it stays in the mind, if it stays theoretical, it won't change your behavior. Real change happens when awareness leads to interruption. When you not only notice the spiral but choose to step out of it. When you don't just observe your thoughts, but replace them, redirect them, or pause them completely with a physical act of grounding. That shift doesn't happen on autopilot. It takes intention. It takes repetition. It takes rewiring. The reason so many of us stop at awareness is because it feels safer. It's reflective. It's internal. It doesn't ask us to risk anything, but stepping out of a thought spiral that feels vulnerable. It means moving without knowing everything. It means choosing when you still have doubts. It means interrupting the brain's favorite illusion. That one more round of thinking will make it better, but it never does. That's why awareness must turn into strategy. You need tools, anchors, patterns that pull you out of your head and into your body, out of your analysis and into your experience. For some, that tool is breathwork, taking 3 deep breaths the moment they notice a thought loop beginning. For others, it's journaling, not to ruminate, but to download the clutter and close the tab. For others, it's physical, taking a walk, changing environments, touching something textured or grounding. The form doesn't matter as much as the intention, to change your state, not just observe your thoughts. There's a difference between watching yourself spiral and stopping the spiral, and the gap between those 2 points. That's where most people live. They know what's happening. They even beat themselves up for it. I can't believe I'm doing this again. I know better. But knowing better doesn't mean you feel better. It doesn't automatically lead to new choices. That requires a shift in practice, not just perception. Here's something powerful to remember. Your brain loves repetition. The more often you respond to a thought with action, instead of rumination, the more automatic that becomes. It's like creating a new pathway in a forest. At first, it's unclear, overgrown, hard to navigate, but the more you walk it, the clearer it gets. Eventually, it becomes your default. The same brain that once defaulted to spiraling can be trained to default to presence, calm, clarity, but not through awareness alone, through repeated interruptions and replacements. This is why the journey of overcoming overthinking isn't passive, it's active. You're not just watching your mind, you're retraining it. Every time you catch yourself overthinking and choose to shift, whether by standing up, taking a breath, changing the subject, making a decision, you're teaching your brain, we don't do that anymore. We don't loop. We don't panic in thought. We don't confuse over-preparing with being in control. We move, we choose, we trust, and over time, something incredible happens. The awareness you began with becomes instinct. You don't have to try so hard to notice the spiral. You feel it in your body, and instead of getting pulled in, you take a breath and return to yourself. That's when awareness becomes more than just insight. It becomes a compass. So yes, awareness is powerful. It's the spark that starts the fire, but don't stop at the spark. Build the flame, create new rituals, find your exit strategy, learn how to pause the loop, not just label it. Because your power lies not in just knowing what's happening, but in choosing what happens next. So many people wait. They wait for the perfect moment, the perfect plan, the perfect mindset. They tell themselves they'll act when they feel more confident, more certain, more ready. They wait until they've thought through every outcome, mapped every possibility, calculated every risk. But here's the truth. Perfection is a moving target. It's an illusion that keeps you stuck, and in the case of overthinking, it's often the anchor holding you down. Because overthinking feeds on the belief that if you think hard enough, you'll make the perfect choice. But life doesn't reward perfect thinking. It rewards action. Progress comes from doing, not from obsessing over how to do it right. Perfectionism is a disguise. It wears the mask of ambition, responsibility, intelligence, but at its core it's fear. Fear of failure, fear of judgment, fear of regret, and fear is paralyzing. When you strive for perfection, you're trying to eliminate all discomfort before moving. But life doesn't work that way. The path becomes clear only after you start walking. You don't become confident before you act. You build confidence through action. And every time you choose to move instead of waiting for perfection, you rewrite the script. You shift from being someone who overthinks to someone who builds. Take a moment to think about the goals, decisions, or changes you've put off. Not because they weren't important, but because you weren't sure how to do them flawlessly. Maybe you wanted to start a new project, reach out to someone, leave something behind, but the pressure to do it exactly right turned into an excuse to delay. You rehearsed conversations in your head, made endless pros and cons lists, sought advice from everyone you knew. And still, you stayed still. That's not lack of effort. That's the trap of perfectionism, and it looks a lot like productivity, but it's not. It's fear in a more convincing costume. The truth is, most people don't regret making imperfect decisions. They regret not acting sooner. They regret the time they spent second, guessing themselves, waiting for signs, searching for the right moment that never came. And often, the only thing standing between where you are and where you want to be is one imperfect step. Not the perfect answer, Just one honest move, one brave choice when you act, especially when it's messy, uncertain, even clumsy. You create motion, and motion builds momentum. It gives you data. It reveals what works and what doesn't. It pulls you out of your head and into the world where real change happens. Every small action is a vote for the person you want to become. And no, it won't be flawless, but that's the point. Progress isn't linear. It's bumpy, it's awkward, it requires learning. But if you wait until you feel 100% ready, you'll still be in the same place a year from now. Oh, we're thinking what could have already been started. And what's powerful is this. Action doesn't just move your life forward. It also calms your mind. Because action interrupts the loop. It turns your attention away from endless analysis and into experience. It gives your overworked brain something real to work with. And suddenly, those fears that felt so big in your mind begin to shrink. You realize you can handle uncertainty. You can move without knowing everything. You can trust yourself enough to try. This is how transformation begins, not with a massive leap, but with one small move in a new direction. Maybe you set a boundary, maybe you say yes or no, maybe you write the first page, make the first call, have the hard conversation. That step won't be perfect, but it will be yours, it will be real. And from there, you can keep going, you can build, you can evolve. That's what overthinking steals from you, the ability to start, and starting is everything. We're so trained to think the goal is perfection that we forget life is made of iterations. Every choice teaches you something, every action shapes the next one. You're not supposed to get it all right. You're supposed to learn, adjust, grow, and none of that happens without action. Not perfect action, any action. So the next time you feel yourself slipping into the spiral, trying to get it just right, before moving forward, pause. Ask yourself, am I aiming for progress, or am I chasing perfection to avoid discomfort? Then take one small step, just one, say the thing, send the message, make the choice. It doesn't have to be the best move, it just has to be yours, because in the end, it's not the most perfect people who change their lives, it's the most courageous. The ones who dare to move while still uncertain, the ones who don't wait to feel ready, the ones who stop overthinking and start doing. That's how you reclaim your mind. That's how you build a life that reflects who you really are. Not by waiting until everything is figured out, but by deciding that imperfect action is more powerful than perfect hesitation.